Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Lindsay. It has been a little while since I've posted some true crime content. I needed a little bit of a break after the Outreau affair. I just needed a break. And then I got tangled up in some hamster drama, but I'm back and I'm happy to say that this video does not come with any warnings. I was watching the Italian Job for the millionth time and it just reminded me of this heist that happened in France in the 70s. It is considered the heist of the century. And I thought, what a fun true crime case that's a bit more lighthearted, that doesn't involve murder or assault. So yeah, I wanted to share it with you guys because it's kind of a crazy story. Grab a coffee for this one, grab a seatbelt, buckle up. It's a wild ride from start to finish. And I'm just gonna dive right in. I hope it's not gonna be too long of a video, but I always say that. It always ends up being longer than I think it is, so I guess hang around and find out. The main protagonist in this story is Albert Spaggiari, though I will be referring to him as Albert because that is just easier for the entire case than saying his name in French. But Albert was born on December 14th, 1932 in Laragne-Montéglin, which is near the French Alps. His parents were French and Italian, and when Albert was only 3 years old, his father passed away. So his mother decided to move the two of them to Hyères, which is on the Mediterranean coast. It's kind of between Marseille and Nice. At the age of 16, Albert ran away from home so that he could meet Salvatore Giuliano. Not saying that right. He's a famous bandit from Sicily who was famous for being the real-life Robin Hood, so robbing from the rich. Not sure if he ever shared it with the poor, but he was a very famous bandit from Italy. And I guess Albert looked up to him, so he ran away from home to be able to meet his idol. And during this runaway trip, he met a bunch of questionable people, of course, and he got inspired by mob-like figures. A year later, in 1950, he became a paratrooper. He wanted to serve in the war in Indochina? I feel like I'm not saying that right. So basically, Indochine is just like a bunch of countries from Southeast Asia grouped together back in the 50s. I'll just write it down below. I'm just going to refer to it as Indochina. I hope I'm not saying that wrong. But he basically left to fight the war there, and he also began his life of thievery and crime while he was serving that war. In 1953, he stole the cash register of a brothel there because he didn't like how his friends were treated at that establishment. And of course, he did get found out, he got arrested, and as a result, he got sentenced to 5 years of forced labor, and he was banned from traveling to Indochina for 20 years. Of course, the sentence was actually served in France, in Marseille. Indochina didn't want him anymore, so he got shipped home for the rest of his sentence. And during his time in prison in Marseille, he learned a few trades, mostly boiler making and soldering. In 1957, after only serving 3 out of the 5 years of his sentence, he moved back to his childhood town in Hyères, where he met his future wife, Audie, like the car. They got married on January 27th, 1959, before moving to Senegal in Dakar, where Albert got a job working for a locksmith, or a company that also made safes, so kind of like both. They made safes, but also locks. And in that job, he learned how to build safes. He also learned how to open them up for clients who had lost their keys. He did that for about a year. They lived there for a year before moving back to France. He kind of managed to stay out of trouble, but not for very long because he quickly became obsessed with the Secret Armed Organization, which is a far-right terrorist group who would carry out bombings and assassinations to prevent Algeria from becoming independent during the Algeria War. So the motto of the organization was, "Algeria is French and will remain so." In February 1962, he and his partners got arrested in an underground illegal printing facility that would basically print out pamphlets to basically advertise that organization, the far-right organization, to keep Algeria as part of France. Police also searched his house as a result of him being involved in this organization. They found weapons, they found guns and ammunition, and as a result he got a 4-year sentence in prison, so he was back to prison again. And he did get released in 1965. He ended up moving to the Nice countryside in the mountains kind of in the sticks just behind Nice, and became even more involved in far-right politics. Now, this man kind of looks like he's about to like bring his guitar to a cookout and sing Kumbaya, but he was actually an extremist. He initially joined the paratroopers mostly because he was told that he could get away with anything there. He was told you can kill, you can rape, you can burn, you can do literally everything you want except lose the war. And that was very appealing to him, which is mainly why he joined that war. His villa where he was staying in the countryside of Nice was actually named Les Oies Sauvages, which is the wild geese. But the way it was written, so the S at the end of Oies and then the S at the beginning of Sauvage was basically printed out to look like the SS symbol in the Nazi movement. He was known to have framed pictures of Hitler throughout his house, and he actually was known by his friends to think of Le Pen as too tame. Now, if you know anything about French politics, Le Pen is a very, very far-right, like, politician who's run for president multiple times. His daughter, I believe, is currently running for president. And yeah, very far right, and he thought they were too tame. So just to give you an idea of what kind of person he was. In 1968, he became a photographer for the town of Nice. He opened his own photography shop. He did some kind of like risky type of shots where it was kind of nude photography, but in the dark. But he also mostly spent his time photographing weddings and funerals. He worked for the town hall basically as the photographer for weddings there. He obviously did not make much money as a photographer. He actually couldn't stand taking pictures of people at weddings and funerals. He was so bored. He hated it. He was so boring. He didn't make any money, and he spent his free time reading books like fiction and thrillers, things like that. On the outside, he seemed to have calmed down. He had done some time in prison multiple times, and he was finally having a quiet life, staying out of trouble, but he hated it. He absolutely hated it. He was bored, he was broke. He needed something exciting. So of course, what do when you're bored and broke? You plan the most ambitious heist in history. He was inspired by a book he had read called Tous à l'égout, which means all to the sewers. I wonder what made him pick up that book. But anyway, the premise of the book was that a bunch of guys robbed a bank or stole from a bank, gaining access to the vault from the sewers, which gave him an idea. He was like, well, hold on, there's sewers in Nice, let's make this happen. He knew people at the town hall. He had a contact there who actually let him know that the Société Générale, so one of the banks, one of the branches or types of banks in France, that was located in Nice, the vault did not have an alarm system. It only had 6-foot thick walls. So that was considered the alarm system, or the, I don't know, the safety net for the bank. They figured, you know, no one's gonna get through a wall that's 6 feet thick, so we're safe. We don't need an alarm. Again, this was in the 70s. And once he heard about that, he thought, well, this is perfect, because the Société Générale at the time was the bank for the bourgeoisie, like all the rich people in Nice, and quite a few rich people in Nice. So it would be an ideal vault to steal from. He ended up looking at sewers and trying to find a point of entrance, which he did. Under the Hall of Exhibitions, there was a river that kind of went underground and then branched out into the sewers, or I guess you could say the other way around, the sewers kind of branched out into the river. Either way, under the Hall of Exhibitions was an entrance through the river and led to the sewers, and 2 kilometers later you would be below the city of Nice. He managed to find out exactly which street or which corner of a street would allow him to start digging and lead straight to the vault room, which is absolutely insane. But he also needed to make sure that there really wasn't any system or alarm inside the vault. So what he did is he actually rented out like a lockbox. Is that what they're called? Like those safety boxes you can pay for at a bank and they'll keep all your valuables safe. He put an alarm in there that would ring, and I'm just picturing those big red alarms that kind of like shake when they ring, like an old school alarm that would ring during the nighttime, and just to make sure that there wasn't an alarm based on like noise or maybe movement, like seismic motion. And he did it, like the alarm rang, nothing got triggered, so he figured it was safe. Once he had figured out the tunnel part or the access part of this heist, he needed a team of men. He didn't know that many people. He also didn't have money to launch this ambitious mission. He ended up finding two very sketchy guys in a pub, Alain Bournat and Francis Pellegrin. And the two of them managed to find him a dozen men, mostly taken from like the mafia of Marseille at the time. They picked men from that gang and they joined in to basically form the team that would steal from the Société Générale. Most of the men were obviously trained or skilled in some sort of manual labor or construction, things like that. They were quite sturdy guys. And on May 7th, 1976, so this took a few years to plan, they started digging the tunnel. It took 2 to 3 months of digging. I know at one point they said they spent 10 days on one rock trying to get through, but they took 2 to 3 months of digging to make an 8-meter long tunnel that led to the wall of the vault. So once they had figured out that tunnel, that 8-meter long tunnel, they still needed to get through 6 feet of wall. The entire operation was insane. I mean, you had to walk over 2 kilometers to even get to the place where you would start digging the tunnel. And you know, it's summer, it was so hot, it was so humid in there were so many rats. I mean, you're going through the sewers. I mean, imagine telling a team of men, like, by the way, guys, we're gonna be going through the sewers, I hope you don't mind. It makes me think of Charlie from Always Sunny.
Can we get naked really quick?
No.
Oh, right. Do you mind if I do? Well, see, the thing is, like, if a wall of water comes through, it's actually pretty sweet to be naked, because then you can hold your clothes up, you know, and then that piss and shit just kind of flows over you. It's more refreshing than you think.
And obviously, they weren't going in empty-handed. They had to carry over 60 pounds of equipment on them, of materials, of supplies to get there. And they would work nights, and they would only dig manually. They didn't use any like electric tools or things like that. Anything that could make too much noise or alert anyone else that they were digging, basically. The first team of men, the first round of men who helped out actually got so sick of it, they bailed. They needed to find another team of guys who could take over the rest of the digging because the first one was like, we're done. This is it. It's too much. We're out. And they eventually did it. They dug the tunnel, the 8-meter long one. They even had electricity. It was properly ventilated. They had carpet on the ground, which was mostly to prevent from getting injured while crawling through it. Kind of like is it Pablo Escobar that had a tunnel dug out to his prison cell and it had like electricity throughout it? Am I remembering this right? That's what it made me think of. It was quite a high-end operation. And finally, during the weekend of the 17th and 18th of July 1976, Albert Spaggiari decided that they would start stealing from the bank. On Friday 16th of July 1976 at 9:30 p.m., the team took down the last portion of wall separating them from the inside of the vault. They camped throughout the weekend in the vault. They stayed overnight. They stayed the whole weekend trying to break into as many safety boxes as possible and steal as much money as possible. They opened 371 safes out of 4,000, and the reason they only opened 371 was because it actually took ages. It took over half an hour to get into just one, and it took so many men to work on just one safe. So unfortunately, unfortunately for them, they couldn't steal from more boxes, which really deeply upset Albert. He wanted to get all 4,000 of them. What they quickly realized was that they also ended up having access to the reserve cash, the cash that is used to be put in ATMs, and that was, hundreds of thousands, really. Amongst gold bars and cash, they also saw nude pictures of local celebrities stored in those safety deposit boxes, which they ended up plastering all over the vault room so that whoever would walk into the room would see all of the pictures, which were obviously meant to be kept private. But unfortunately for the entire team, that weekend was particularly rainy, and it wasn't until it was almost too late that one of the guys noticed that the water was rising faster than usual inside the sewer, and they had to stop the operation earlier than planned. So Sunday morning at 2 a.m., they decided to just cut their losses, grab everything they could, and make their way out of the entire tunnel and the sewers, because otherwise they would be trapped inside the vault. They did end up going back later on once the water had gone down, but overall it took them 3 round trips, all of them, to get all of their treasure out. They had water up to their necks, and they had a Land Rover waiting near the Hall of Exhibition, so basically where the entrance or exit was. They loaded all of the loot inside that Land Rover and took off into the countryside back to a villa where they had planned the entire heist. Overall, the team got away with 50 million francs, which in today's money is way over 30 million euros. And the guys made sure to remove all the evidence, even though they were kind of rushed towards the end. They removed all of the fingerprints, any DNA from any urine left behind. They just cleaned the whole place down to make sure that no one could trace it back to them. The only thing they ended up leaving inside that room was a message on a piece of paper saying, "No weapons, no violence, and without hate." Which is probably one of the most fascinating aspects of this heist, is that they did not once use a weapon or any violence. It was all done in the middle of the night and without anyone seeing them. What they also did was they soldered the entire vault room door from the inside, so that when bank employees tried to access the vault, they found out that they couldn't open it from the outside, meaning that they would have to dig an entrance through 6 feet of wall. And the entrance was so slim and narrow that the police officer who was sent inside to basically do a search of the room and make sure it was clear had to remove his entire uniform and had to go in there in his underwear with a gun, just squeeze through that little hole in the wall through 6 feet of wall, which was be so claustrophobic, only to get to the inside of the room and be completely flabbergasted is the only word I can think of. Now, obviously, all of the clients from the bank, all of the people who had valuables or money or precious personal items in those safety boxes, as well as basically all their life savings, were devastated from this heist. I mean, this did affect people on a personal level, which is tragic. I mean, I can't imagine losing everything and thinking that the bank you're using is safe when someone managed to use the sewers to access it. But at the same time, a lot of the poor people in the region looked up to whoever had carried out this heist because he stole from the rich. Now, he didn't really give it back to the poor. He was like a Robin Hood kind of persona, mostly because he didn't use any violence. Police had no idea where to begin with the investigation. As I said, there was no evidence left behind, and the message they left on the wall was very confusing because what kind of criminal mastermind would take the time to write a note saying, didn't use weapons or violence and we didn't use hate? So it kind of threw them off. But in the meantime, Albert took a plane to the States. He went straight to Washington, D.C. And I think he could not be known as the mastermind behind the heist. I mean, it was too insane. No matter how much effort they went through to remove all the evidence from the vault and the safes, he needed people to know that he was the one behind this insane heist. So he went to Washington, D.C., walked right up to the CIA. I don't know, they have an office or something. Either way, he went up to the CIA and say, "Hi, I'm Bert," not from like Sesame Street, just like Albert, I guess, nicknamed himself Bert, and said, "Hey, I was the one behind that heist. Y'all want my services or something? Because I'm pretty cool. Like, I can do some really, really wild stuff." CIA is like, "What the fuck is this clown?" Just decided to kind of ignore him. They kind of sent him off, but they also contacted the French police saying, "Hey, we got this guy named Bert who just said he committed the heist of the century, who's offering his services. Do you guys want to look into this?" And you would think like, wow, what an idiot. He just gave his name away and now police are going to be onto him. They weren't, because police genuinely thought that in order to carry out a heist like that, you would need to be a big shot, like a professional team of guys, or a big name in the mafia or something like that, not some nobody named Bert. Like, they just didn't even look into him. They were like, all right, cool, just send him on his way then. But in the meantime, police did try to find out what was going on. I mean, obviously by dismissing Albert, they were doing something wrong, but they found out where the team had been staying in the villa. So the villa where they had been planning the entire heist. And what's crazy is that 10 days before the heist, police found four suspicious looking men hanging out in the villa, and an informant came up to police and said, hey, those four guys you just checked out in that villa, you might want to keep an eye on them. Word around town is they're about to do something big in the area. But it was very vague. Police had no idea what that could have been, so they're like, all right, cool, I guess we'll keep a close eye on them. Didn't. And then once the heist happened, the informant was like, see those four guys I told you about, that was them. So police was like, all right, great, okay. So they started looking into these guys. They decided to also look into the villa, where they found muddy boots as well as a bunch of weapons. And the mud on the boots was tested, and it was basically identical to the mud found in the sewers as well as the mud found in the vault room. They arrested those guys, and in the meantime, they also heard about two other guys. Now, these were the two that Albert had met in the pub, Alain Bournat and Francis Pellegrin. And those two idiots took the gold bars stolen from the vault and tried to negotiate with Crédit Agricole, which is another bank in France, trying to sell the gold bars, being like, hey, we got some gold, do you want to give us cash in exchange? We heard you like gold. Of course, they had serial numbers on them, so the Crédit Agricole contacted police, and this was a match to the stolen bar, so they arrested those two. And as soon as they were arrested, they just started talking. There was no snitches get stitches. They're like, nah, I'll tell you exactly who did it. It's Albert Spaggiari, the same guy who went to the CIA to offer his services, so police were like, what do you mean? In the meantime, of course, Albert had no idea he was being snitched on. He had come back from the States, but he had already left to go on a work trip to Japan with the mayor of Nice. He was the official photographer on a trip to Japan, I guess, to take pictures of the mayor in Japan. I'm not sure what he was needed there for, but he was on a work trip. He had no idea his partners in crime had snitched on him. So when he came back from his trip, he got arrested at the Nice airport on October 27th, 1976. Once police had him arrested, they also searched his home where his wife lived as well. They found metal detectors, they found military-grade weapons, ammunition, grenades, explosives, and also 6 million liras. Or is it liras? 6 million liras, which was the currency of Italy before the euro. Now, while Albert was being interrogated, he never gave any names. Interestingly enough, I mean, he got snitched on, but he never offered any names to police. He did confess to having stolen the money, and I think, to be honest, he was quite proud of it. A heist like that, of course, you're going to want street cred for it. And he also explained to police that the main reason behind this heist was because he wanted to start a far-right extremist terrorist group called Catena. Catena? It just means chain in Italian, and I'm not saying it right, but basically he wanted to start a far-right extremist group to counterattack the far-left extremist group in Italy who was attacking the far-right or something. Like, basically he wanted retaliation. Basically he was stealing funds from the bank to fund a terrorist organization, and he just told police, like, you don't get it, I have this organization dream that I want to start to fight back. Police are like, right, okay, well, regardless, we need to arrest you, regardless of the reason behind the heist, because you stole all this money. And police didn't have access to the money. They had a few gold bars that were found and some of the money found at his home, but they didn't really have most of the sum that was stolen. So they told Albert that if he confessed, they would keep his wife out of the story, because obviously she was implicated. She lived at the house and she was surrounded by all this illegal, weaponry. So they basically said, if you confess to this story, we'll keep your wife out of this, and he agreed. After about 5 months in custody, so he was in custody / prison, I guess, Albert told his lawyer that he was gonna escape. He's like, I'm sick of this. I hate being in jail. I've been there before. It's not for me. I'm just not vibing with it. I need to get out of here. And the lawyer's like, you can't, don't, please don't. He's like, look, you don't have to do the time. I have to do it. Also, you're not the one escaping. I am, so don't worry about it. And I'm not sure why he told his lawyer he was gonna do that, because it's not like the lawyer was gonna help him, but he did. He told the lawyer, I'm out, just so you know. During his time in prison, he did get fit. His cellmate was like, what's going on? What's wrong with this guy? He's doing push-ups every day. He's doing like tuck and roll type of things. Like, he's doing parkour in his prison cell, basically staying as fit as possible because he wanted to be ready for escape. His sole purpose in prison was to get out. He managed to come up with a few plans with his ex-friends, his ex-army friends, paratroopers from Indochina, and one of them actually involved exploding a grenade into, or like throwing a grenade into the judge's office, and they're like, that's kind of spicy. Let's just keep it peaceful because our motto is no weapons, no violence, and without hate, so let's just keep it kosher. We'll do something a bit more G-rated. On March 10th, 1977, Albert and his lawyer made their way to the judge's office, surrounded by a few police officers as escort. This was, of course, before the trial, and Albert was going to the judge's office to share with him some doodles of the tunnels, the maps, basically the plans he had before the heist, to talk him through the entire scenario. Albert told the judge that he had some very, very confidential revelations to make him involving high-ranking politicians, and the judge, of course, could not allow any rumors or anything like that, any information to be leaked from that office, so he asked the police to leave his office, and it would just be the judge, the lawyer, and Albert. Once the police left the room, Albert gave him 3 drawings from the tunnels or whatever it was. He just gave the judge on his desk 3 drawings, and the judge started looking at them and he's like, these make no sense. He couldn't figure them out. It just looked like gibberish. So he's like, look, I'll just put these aside and look at them in my own time. To which Albert said, after standing up, he said, yeah, you keep those as a souvenir, rushes to the window, opens the window, and starts stepping over the windowsill. Obviously, at that point, the judge realizes that Albert's trying to run away, and in a panic, he ends up pushing him out the window. So the judge basically panicked and thought, wow, this guy's trying to escape. So instead of like pulling him back inside, he thought, let me just push him. And that way, if he falls from the 2nd floor, he'll like maybe break his leg or something. He'll like get injured, but he won't be able to run away. I don't think, obviously he didn't want to kill him, but he just wanted to injure him so that he can successfully run away. But it didn't work. He ended up falling on top of a car that was parked below, and he literally did a tuck and roll flawlessly, put his Ray-Bans back on, ran to a motorcycle nearby where one of his friends was waiting for him, waved to the judge and the lawyer, and just took off. And the ultimate girl boss move was that he actually ended up sending a check for 5,000 francs to the owner of the car that was parked below. That car was not planned at all. Basically to pay for the damages to the car after he had escaped. From that moment on, Albert was on the run. He was taken to an underground parking lot just below the Place Masséna in Nice, which is like the city center. And from that car park, he hopped off the motorcycle, went into the boot of another car, and basically made his way out of Nice inside the trunk of a car. He went all the way to Paris, where he met Emilia de Secco, who fell in love with him. They kind of just both fell in love with each other, and they decided to just run away together. They moved to Brazil and started their life together. Now what's wild is that they quickly ran out of money because the guys he did the heist with never really gave him his share of the treasure. He got 3 million francs, which is not that much in terms, it's less, I want to say less than 2 million euros, maybe 1.5. It's not enough when you're on the run. It really isn't. Like, he's trying to stay, like, fly under the radar, moving to different countries, you need fake passports, things like that. So it was costing him a lot of money, and he really didn't get much out of this heist. He tried to make a little bit of cash by selling pictures of himself to the media to taunt police. So he would send pictures of himself in different outfits, and a lot of people in France thought that it was hilarious because police couldn't find him. It's like if you've seen Amélie, the French movie about that girl who likes, I mean, that's not the plot of the movie, but she steals the dwarf, like the little statue that's in her dad's garden, and she gives it to her flight attendant friend, and she sends like Polaroid pictures of that little dwarf statue all across the world and sends them to her dad. That's what it made me think of. He was basically taunting police through the media, trying to make a few bucks. He also sold an interview while he was in Bolivia, basically going over the heist, because at the end of the day, he just wanted recognition. He wanted people to know that he, Albert Spaggiari, committed the most insane heist in history. By then, of course, he was no longer Albert or Bert. He was Romain Clément. He had changed his name. He spent the next decade or so in South America, mostly Brazil, Argentina. He was really paranoid about getting caught, so he got plastic surgery. In 1981, he went back to Rome for surgery for his kidney cancer. And then after that surgery in Rome, he got paranoid. He was afraid that he had said things under anesthesia, so he went back to Bolivia. And then in 1978 in Argentina, he wrote a book called The Sewers of Paradise. He also spent time hiding in Spain and Chile. The whole time he was still with Emilia, his partner. And he also spent time in Italy, while occasionally coming back to France, but really keeping a super low profile. He ended up writing another book titled The Diary of a Truffle. Now that's the direct translation from the French title, but now that I'm thinking about it, I wonder if it's not The Diary of an Idiot. It could be either, we'll never know. So let's just go with The Diary of a Truffle. That's the name. That's what he wrote. I'm sure it's riveting. But over time, people got less and less interested in him. Obviously, the novelty had worn off. They're like, right, we get it. You're on the run. I mean, the only people who were still upset, obviously, were the people who lost all their money and valuables, which I understand. He ended up trying to get some of his friends from his far-right groups to send him money, and they did. Surprisingly, they really helped him out. They sent money when they could, but it still wasn't really enough. So he and Emilia ended up moving back to the north of Italy to literally live in the mountains in the middle of nowhere in a cabin. And he was so bored. He hated it. It was boring. He never really got the money he wanted from the heist. He wanted to live a life of adventure, a life of excitement. Imagine being involved in a heist like that. Like the adrenaline, nothing will ever compare to that. And now he's stuck in a boring cabin in the mountains in Italy. That's just kind of like, nah. With 6 months left to live, he ended up marrying Emilia de Secco, and on June 8th, 1989, he died from lung cancer. Although some sources say it was throat cancer, I'm sure it was a healthy mix of both. He had terminal cancer, and once he had passed away, his wife moved him from the north of Italy to his hometown in France in a caravan. She just took him home in the caravan, dead. No one at the border asked any questions. They're like, just nothing to declare, it's gone right through. And she basically brought him back to his hometown, or where his mother lived, basically, where she could say her last goodbyes to her son before bringing him back to his birth town where he could be buried. His name is incredibly famous amongst far-right groups. He is very, very, very popular. He's very legendary amongst far-right movements and politicians, but he also inspired a brand new gang of robbers called the Hairpiece Gang. That doesn't translate correctly, but that is essentially what they were named. And it was basically a gang that would rob banks. They robbed, what, 30 banks? Multiple banks in the 80s? I don't know how many, but they robbed quite a few banks in the 80s, and they all showed up wearing wigs, hairpieces, fake mustaches, fake beards, things like that, which is what gave them the name the Hairpiece Gang. Although that gang obviously got busted, but it was interesting that they got inspired by Albert, which I'm sure Albert inspired many movies and other wannabe robbers or criminals. And that's pretty much it for the video. It's a weird ending, I'm sorry, but basically, yeah, that is the heist of the century in France from the 70s, which honestly I don't think could be recreated today. But I was telling my friend about this, and I was saying, if you watched a movie with this plot, you'd be like, that's a good movie, but that would never happen. And it's insane to think that it did happen. They did carry out this robbery, this insane robbery. Most of the money is still missing. We don't know where it is. I mean, it's probably spent by now. But yeah, no violence, no guns, no weapons. No one knew about it. The tenacity they had in like going through with this plan. Do you know what surprises me the most is that this man was like bored and broke, and he's like, this is not okay. I need to rob a bank. And then proceeded to find 15 people who would join him on this journey twice because they had to replace the first team. And that's what blows my mind, because I can't even make dinner plans without 2 people canceling. And like this man was like, you know what, I'm kind of bored. Instead of like cross-stitching or something, he's like, I'm just gonna do this crazy heist. and it's gonna work out, and it did. And like, I don't condone it, it's still a crime, and I don't condone robbing or breaking and entering, and I feel awful for the people who got stolen from. I mean, that's devastating to have your personal belongings taken away from you, even if it's just money, and even if you get the money back in a settlement maybe, I don't know. I definitely don't like that. I don't like that he was, you know, funding far-right movements. That's just not my cup of tea. That is terrorism. But if you ignore that part, it's just insane. And I don't know, it's like, it's not very often that I get to do a true crime video that's exciting. So I just wanted to share it with you guys. That's it. That's all I got for you. I hope it was fun. Let me know what you think of this heist, and if you know of another heist that is just equally insane, because so far that's the most insane one I've ever heard of. I also just ate like a cheese sandwich for lunch, and then I had tiramisu. I'm like lactose intolerant. So I'm gonna go lie down and cry in pain. But I think it's time to wrap up this video, guys. If you have any other suggestions for other videos you'd like to see, please comment down below. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe, all that jazz. I really enjoy covering French cases. I feel like that's just my channel now. I just do French cases. Because until someone suggests a goddamn video, I'm just gonna keep doing whatever I want. So I hope you like it, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.